Hello and welcome back to Beyond Insights. Today, we're going to be speaking to Simon Magner, and we're going to be covering loads of topics from compliance to his new business, Kosectly. For starters, as some of you will know, many business owners do see compliance as a grudge expense, something that they have to spend on but would rather not think about. But ensuring compliance is not only essential for businesses, it actually helps them grow faster and make better decisions. And as I said, today we're going to have Simon speak to us about all things compliance and Kosectly. And quite excitingly, as I mentioned, Kosectly is Simon's new company that he's recently started. It's based around the modern company secretary. So the partner that handles all the confusing legal paperwork and compliance, so that founders can help grow their businesses and startups can focus entirely on making money and growing fast. So Simon, welcome to Beyond Insights. Thanks for joining us. Have I got that introduction about sort of what company secretary is?
Yeah, thanks, Wendy. Appreciate you having me on the podcast. And it's probably the first time anyone's ever introduced me as Simon from Kosectly because it's such a new thing. For clarity's sake, I am a chartered accountant by profession, and we've been running a cloud accounting business for the last 30 years in the Xero ecosystem, and it's been a great journey over that bit of time. And probably about 6 to 8 months ago, we realized that, with the grey listing that happened last year and everyone got a bit sensitive around South Africa and our lack of disclosure, the CIPC decided just to level up compliance requirements. Beneficial ownership became a slight swear word in many communities around what you needed to do. And the onerous requirements just became more. Historically, you used to register a company with CIPC, and all you had to worry about is once a year you logged in, typed in your turnover, and they asked you to pay a few $100,000 and you were good for another year. That simple process has now become a complex process. And I think we realized that it was onerous for us as an accounting business, and we realized that other people probably weren't doing a great job at it. And also, to your point, probably weren't that excited about it. So that was kind of the starting point. And that's kind of where Kosectly, the new company, was birthed from. Myself and my brother, Peter, run Iridium Business Solutions. And we've done a lot of work with a company called Legalese, which is headed up by Eitan Stern. And Eitan and us just kind of saw eye to eye. He knew there was a problem from a legal perspective that people needed to address. We saw it as a challenge, in the accounting space. And we thought, with our powers combined, we can probably do something better. So that's kind of where Kosectly came from. And that's, it's a few months old, so it's relatively fresh, but that's what we're trying to, make better.
Amazing. So, if we take a step back and go back to compliance, you've mentioned there that you're a chartered accountant with loads and loads of experience. You will have seen inside hundreds of businesses. So in your opinion, what's the biggest blind spot that otherwise well-run SMEs have when it comes to compliance?
Yeah, I think people don't know what happens when things go wrong, and people don't have visibility. So the error that many people make is, my accountant has that, I don't have to worry. And yes, you should trust accountants, but only as much as the information they share with you. So I like to tell anyone that we work with, ask your accountant for information and know what you need to know. Because if you don't file your annual return with CIPC and you don't pay your tax to SARS, they will come knocking. And they can suspend your business. They can, potentially close it down if you don't do what you need to do. And it's not good enough to say, I thought my accountant had it. So I think whilst you don't have to be an expert at everything as a business owner, I think it's super powerful to know, what do I need to know? Like, what are the non-negotiables? There's a long list of them, unfortunately, but you could have a one-pager that tells you, this is all I need to know. And like anything in life, you don't need to be an expert at everything, You just need to know the right questions to ask. So if you were running your own business, Wednesday, and you said to me, what are the questions I need to ask my person? I would say, when are my financial statements due? What is my financial year end? It should be an easy question. When are we paying tax next? Have we paid our latest VAT, PAYE, income tax? Have we filed a return? And if you know all those dates, you can ask really good, open-ended questions. Can I see this? Can I see that? Because if you file your CRPC return from a compliance point of view, you get a piece of paper that says, well done, you've done it. Another great thing that most people don't realize is accountants like to charge for what they do. If your accountant hasn't charged you for something, he probably hasn't done it. So that's normally, it's a secondary thought, but think about it. If you do work, you're going to charge them.
100%.
If you haven't charged, you probably didn't do it. So I would have my cheat sheet if I'm a business owner. These are the non-negotiables. And then touch base every now and again and say, where are we at?
Amazing. I think that's really good advice, actually. And then on the topic of sort of company secretarial, I've got to admit, it's one of the first times I've heard that word. Would you be able to sort of explain that in simple terms and why it's seen as a separate legal function, even though you say it's deeply tied into the financial structure?
I mean, if we think about companies, you register a company with CRPC. So that back in the day used to be called CIPRO. It's now CRPC. I'm not going to pretend to explain everything, but effectively it's the company's an intellectual property commission. And they are the controlling body in South Africa for-profit companies. You can also register a non-profit company through CRPC, and you can register an external branch of an overseas. There's a few other things, but the primary thing is a PTY limited. But that's what most business owners are going to be looking at CRPC for. Historically, they almost had no control and influence. But on an annual basis, they want their money to keep you active. So as a simple company secretarial function, you need to file an annual return once a year. And like I mentioned earlier, there's now more steps included in that. So that's part of the secretarial process. And you need to confirm who are the ultimate owners. You've heard the term beneficial ownership before. It's been around. A lot of people like to use the word ultimate beneficial ownership. And something that I think lawyers and accountants use a lot. They use this term. You need to get to not a legal person like a company, but you need to get to like real person, like blood. So you need to get to someone, because a lot of times people hide behind funny corporate structures and no one really knows who owns what. And we always used to joke as accountants, you can find out every single company that a politician is a director of. But if he or she is not a director, it's like they're a ghost. You don't know what they have. Now, being a director doesn't mean you have money. It just means you're the responsible party. The value comes from being the shareholder. But you never had to disclose shareholding, which made no sense to me. I mean, why would you not need to disclose your shareholding to anyone? Because that's the value, isn't it? So this whole greatest thing that started happening a couple of years ago was you need to tell us who your shareholders are. And you can't just say, Wenzi Pty Limited is my shareholder. You need to say, and the shareholder of Wenzi is, that person or that family trust. So that's what the requirements were. Now you can imagine people with very complicated structures need to map out all these levels of ownership. Then you need to upload documents. You need to prove FICA requirements. There's a whole lot of little steps in the way that's just making this process better. And all that admin, that's kind of the basics of secretarial. If you go and read the Companies Act, it actually says you should have meetings with your board. You should have meetings with directors and shareholders, and you should be signing off and approving key decisions in the business. That's also secretarial work. A lot of SMEs just ignore that. But technically, you should be approving all your big decisions you make. The only time people tend to do any resolutions is when they want to open a bank account. was the bank sends you like a template and says, sign here, and tell us you want an overdraft, sign this template. It's not your template. They've just made it up and given it to you, but those kind of things should be visible. If you get audited or you have more outside shareholders, you got to prove your governance, don't you? There's corporate governance that comes into it. So what's the best way to prove you did things correctly? Minutes of a meeting. This is the minutes of the meeting. We discussed this. We agreed that Simon's a great director. He deserves a 100,000 Rand increase. Those are all the things you need to prove. And a company secretary, when you get to more complicated places, their responsibility is to oversee all those processes. And then it gets even more complex from a legal point of view, and which is why working with a law firm like Legalese is great for us. If you set up a new company, most people just go with a generic memorandum of incorporation, founding documents. But if you want to be very specific, you can actually make custom documents, which is more complex.
So I guess you've actually answered a bit of what I wanted to ask you next, which was, beyond the late fees, which is what we're sort of mostly accustomed to, what are some of those proper dangers about messy corporate paperwork? So you've already mentioned there that, there's missing board minutes, which could be an issue, if there's shareholder records which are not done correctly. But does it really affect, or should I say, how does it affect things like, your company's ability to secure a loan or be acquired? Because I'm sure that's what people will be thinking as well.
Yeah, I mean, something that a lot of people don't realize is if you own a company and you've bought a property in that company, so that's a very common thing. If you don't do your annual return for that company, and you go into deregistration with CRPC, you can't operate. And if you don't have a active company, it becomes a problem, because how can you have a deregistered company that owns a property? How do you sell that property now? You can't. Because the company is a separate legal person. So that's messy. We've also had instances where people don't maintain a share register, and they have no visibility of anything. And then we've had clients who come along and say, but I own 50% of the company. And the other shareholder says, no, I remember you sold me 30% last year. And he says, where's the paperwork? Prove to me. And then they start going to lawyers now, and they say, oh, but here's my share register. Remember, we did it on Excel and we typed it up. And we didn't sign it. No one bothered signing the share certificates because we said we know each other, we're buddies. Now, knowing each other, we're buddies, when the company's worth 25 million Rand now, and you claiming you own 50% and your buddy says you own 20, that's a lot of money. Another thing we've had with clients, which people don't realize, is if you haven't actually issued a share and people have given you money, and now you've spent that money to grow a business, if you haven't issued the shares, the money could be seen as a loan. And those people could say, well, you never issued me a share. I'd like my money back now. And if you've spent all the money, where's it coming from? So very important things to get right. And like you said earlier, banks, financial institutions, if you haven't got your ducks in a row, no one's going to lend you any money. And when suddenly you think you've hit it big with the latest tech toy or tool that you've built out, no one's going to give you money if you can't prove your share register and everything's lined up. Often when people try and raise funding, the first thing they do is they send a very technical accountant in, and they do something called the due diligence. And what are they really doing? They're kicking the tires to see if everything stands up, and when they start kicking the tires, give me 10 minutes with someone's accounting records and their compliance stuff, and I'll tell you whether they're running a good business, because you can pick it up very quickly as a competent accountant, and if things don't line up, why would you want to invest money in someone's business who can't keep things organized? That doesn't paint a very good picture, does it?
Yeah, 100%. Couldn't agree more. So I guess it sounds as though you've got quite a good background and understanding of the way that these two topics sort of mix together. But was there, because you've mentioned before that, you're obviously part of Iridium, was there a specific tipping point which made you think that, you needed these complementary services that you're providing through Cosecly? So,
I suppose, Yeah.
No, sorry, go for it. I was just sort of going to carry on in the
I
same
love
vein.
it.
So it's, yeah, exactly. Go for it. No,
Yep.
please.
So Wednesday, 100%, you're right. I think we, about a year ago, we had one person in our team who was responsible for secretarial work. And we realized that it became quite onerous, the amount of work that she was tackling. And she was responsible for labor department as well. So that's a whole other thing we haven't even touched on. But, COIDA returns or workman's compensation, that's a requirement for every company who has employees on a payroll. They need to file a return every year.
Those two things, sorry. COIDA report and?
Yeah, so COIDA, which is the COIDA and workman's compensation, are, you can use the word interchangeably. It's the same thing. But effectively, the Department of Labor says that every employer needs to register with them for workman's compensation. And that's kind of like on the job insurance, let's call it, you know. So effectively, if you came to work, the photocopier machine fell on your leg, it broke your leg and you couldn't work for a month, you could apply to COIDA to pay you out some monies for the fact that you can't. So that's the basic idea. You're legally required to file returns with them. The fact that their website goes down for 4 months a year because they're upgrading, and it normally happens around the same time you need to file the return, that's a separate challenge.
Yeah.
But the fact is you need to engage with them. They are hard at time to engage with. So that became a really onerous project to tackle. We realized we needed more people in that team to kind of deal with it. So we increased the team to 2 people. And then when the grey listing happened last year, and they increased the requirements for CRPC, we suddenly saw this is not a simple problem to solve. Accountants also speak to one another. When you speak to other accountants and how they're doing, guys use choice words around how they feel about, the secretarial side of compliance, and they go, that's not fun. I don't think I'm on top of that. And what we realized is there can be lots of technology tools out there that can help you solve these problems, but you still need a really good people process to use the technology to enable what you're doing. And I think a lot of people misinterpret the complexity of doing certain things. And let's be honest, no one starts a company because they love compliance. People start a company because they're passionate about music, sports, solving some kind of fashion problem or a technology problem. They want to solve a problem, and all the noise around, what you need to do is a lot. So we realized that you have to solve that problem to make people's lives easier. And the whole world's moved to a subscription model. Like everyone understands subscriptions. I was going to say you pay your DSTV subscription. I think they've lost a lot of people. Let's not say that anymore. But you pay your mobile phone subscription, or you pay for your fiber, or you pay for Netflix or whatever subscription. So we all understand that. I think 20 years ago, everyone thought they needed to own everything. My dad's got a collection of like 10,000 CDs. I have none, because why do I need to own music? I just sign up for Spotify or Apple Music and I've got all I need. So I think we understand this logic of never owning it, but having access to things. So we also thought that people don't want to pay big fees for solving things up front. So we built Cosecli off the back of the idea of a retainer model. You pay a monthly service fee for us to tackle things. It's not going to be a big number. And that way you can plan for the whole year. And whatever you need, come at us. We've got you. Much like on Netflix, you can watch 1 movie or 1,000 movies. You've got the access to use it. And we think people resonate with that idea. And if we do a bad job, you can hold us accountable and say, I'm ending my subscription. I'm going to do something else. But we like to think that when you start doing it, you're just going to, let's keep going because it makes my life easier. And also financial professionals don't always want to do this part of the job. So the idea really is we're not going to compete with guys for their accounting work and their legal work and the other work. We're saying we'll do this really well. You let us help you with this. You can do all the stuff that you really enjoy doing. So a group of companies where they've got a CFO and an FM and a controller can say, guys, that's not our favorite part of the job. You do it. And we'll focus on running our business and our finances, and we can rely on you. So that kind of use the specialist, trust them, let them do what they need to do, I think makes a ton of sense to us. And based on the engagements we've had over the last few months, it makes a lot of sense to people out there in the market.
I love that. So it's like specializing in what you know you're really good at, but maybe other people don't want to do themselves. I think that makes a lot of sense. So, I mean, I know, and I hope those listening will know that Iridium itself is known for, tech and automation. So on the topic of CoSecly, how are you leveraging these two things to simplify sort of the legal compliance tasks?
100%. So we obviously using a back-end tool. So we're currently using a product called Infodocs, which allows us to digitize the share registers. Everything's in the cloud. We can add companies in there. We can, maintain the director's information, shareholder information, registered address, all that sort of stuff. So quick, easy access. And believe it or not, CRPC actually has a really good website. They've done a good job of building out a good backend. And we also use a number of software products internally. So we've got a really great workflow management tool that we use in-house, which a product called Carbon. Carbon's a great tool to use. It integrates with a number of different products, and it just makes everything super visible. So one of the things we realized is most work in our space, on the service space, gets driven off an email or a phone call. Someone emails you, hey, Simon, can you please action this? Now, if your email program is separated from your work management process, you're having to do extra work to now go and copy data between the two. The thing that we love about Carbon is the emails come into the inbox and all the work is linked to the same program. So if you send me an email saying, hey, Simon, I just had a great weekend with my buddies and I realized I need to start a new company that's going to run music concerts around South Africa because there's a gap. I saw it, we can get that email from you on Monday morning, add it to a new task, register a company for Wednesday. We can then action all our workflow because now we've got the 25 steps we need to follow, just following through on that work item and everything goes. So that's a great workflow for us. Obviously, no one wants to be signing things manually. So we've got e-sign tool that we use. I like using Adobe Sign, but there's many tools out there that work really well. And then everything else is just digital. We signed up for a cell phone with Melon Mobile because they're a great provider and they're offering really good deals. If you haven't checked them out, I think they've got like an unlimited phone call package for like 200 Rand a month, which is a great deal. So I love tech, and they're just building off the back of some of the bigger guys, but realizing that everyone wants data. And with WhatsApp these days, why should you pay for phone calls? No one likes paying for that. You're in a Wi-Fi zone, phone calls are free. I got a notification today from MTN telling me that they just allocated me 700 SMSs for the month.
Jeez.
And I was like, when am I going to use them? Who uses SMSs anymore? So it's really cool that all these tech tools are out there. We obviously use Xero in the back end for accounting. And we use Ignition as a tool to kick out proposals. So all these different things, it's great to have APIs where things talk to one another. And I suppose that's probably why our business has grown really well. Like myself and my brother both love tech. A new tool comes out, we want to dig in, work out how to do it better. And I think when you embrace it like that, it makes every process you look at an opportunity to improve and to fix, and make it better.
So I guess for our SME listeners then, could you just give them a bit of an idea of, how does having your resolutions, your processes, all of that completely nailed down actually let them make better, faster, strategic decisions?
Sure. I think it gives you peace of mind to start with. That feeling of what did I miss out on is never a fun feeling. When you get to the end of the week and go, I know I should have done something, but I'm not sure what it is. So I think peace of mind, that's super important. I think the other thing from a legal compliance side is knowing that you've got a professional partner that you can work with, whether it's us or anyone out there offering a similar solution, that you can hold them accountable and rely on them to get things done. And if something doesn't make sense, don't just go to a braai on the weekend and someone says, oh, don't worry about that. No one checks it. phone up the person you're paying money that's a professional and say, hey guys, do I need to worry about this? Is this important? You know, can I do this? Can't I do this? And the number of people who have their physical addresses, registered as the old flat that they sold 4 years ago, and they still have that as their trading address. That's not good enough. You've got to do better than that. I think if you do things really well, I get the feeling that feeling of professionalism and really well runness kind of permeates throughout your whole operation. I like doing things well. If I'm playing around at golf with my friends, I want to hit every shot well. We know it doesn't work like that, but we can always dream, can't we?
Yeah, 100%. 100%. I mean, you yourself, Simon, you're blending accounting and tech and legal expertise. So I want to find out from you, do you see more professional services firms moving to this sort of multidisciplinary model?
It definitely is trending. I mean, I've had a number of conversations with guys from the US and the UK, and the idea of shared services that integrate together more is super important. The idea of private equity has grown a lot over the last 10 years. And if you go and chat to anyone who invests in companies, one of the biggest challenges they find is the inconsistencies of services across the companies they've deployed money into, and the lack of reliability in what they're seeing. So I think if I had lots of money, and obviously I hope to have lots of money one day that I could deploy, what is the first thing I'm going to do? Is I'm going to set up a team of experts around me that I can go to every single company I'm going to invest in and say, guys, you're the best guys at doing this. We're going to put best practices. Because that's what running a business is. It's an operational thing that you need to make in the back end. And the front end is where the creative and the inspirational stuff happens. But the basics should just work like clockwork. Okay? We all know what you need to do. Get it done. Make it really good. Make it super visible. You can't be waiting a month after month end or, to get any visibility of your numbers. It should be quick, easy, simple to access. And then that gives you the power to make great decisions. And when we chat to clients who've worked elsewhere before and they come to us and go, I don't even know if I'm making money. That's not a good place to be.
So I guess on that topic, do you have an opinion on what this might mean for sort of the next generation of CAs and, COSEC, let's call it profession?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I mean, my take right now is that a chartered accountant, as that's my professional designation, must not see being an accountant as the endpoint of their professional journey. I think having a really good grasp of numbers and finances is great, but technology and finance are almost blended together now. So if you go out into the world, as a professional and you don't understand technology, I'm not saying I need to be able to code because ChatGPT could do that for me, but I need to understand how it works and how it talks to one another and how do APIs work and how do I move things around. So I suppose what I'm saying is you need to understand how to walk alongside all the different solutions out there in the world and get the best value from what they are. And you should be the leader in the business to deploy the right solutions and understand the complexities because there are a lot. And I think it's only going to get more onerous as we move forward, which means you need kind of like a playbook or a game plan. When you come into something, what are the 10 non-negotiables? Lock those down. And then you can move on to what are the things we need to improve and get better at. And, I think you can plan a lot of things really well. And then the things that are unplannable, well, then you've got less to worry about because other things are happening. Now you can operate within, the realm. So I think I love some people who go into environments and they say, I like working off the cuff. I just wing it. Yeah. Go and ask the person how much preparation they did before they started winging it. And what you actually realize is they like the feeling of winging it, which actually means they prepared really well for everything they needed to do. So when they got into that situation, they could adjust their approach really quickly to different things because they'd already pre-thought it through. Much like we're having a chat today in this podcast, we pre-think what are the potential things so that you're more adaptable as things happen. Much like in a rugby game, I'm sure Rassie spends the entire week with our Springbok team going, how do we get ready for the weekend? And what happens if they do this? What happens if they do that? You're troubleshooting, aren't you?
100%. 100%. So I guess because we're looking to the future, now I'm going to put you on the spot here, Simon. What do you reckon is the biggest sort of prediction for how compliance will be managed by SMEs, let's say 5 years from now?
Sure. So the biggest predictor, or are you wanting me to paint a picture of what I think it's going to look like?
Yeah. So what's your prediction for, how compliance will be managed by SMEs?
Yeah, I think SMEs need to rely on technology to give them visibility, and they need to rely on professional service providers that can deploy the technology or support them in the technology. And I think guys love outsourcing and using people they can rely on. And I'm really hoping tech gets a lot better, that improves and consistently gets that process more automated. I don't want to make money off filing a really simple return in a basic process. I'd rather add value to companies. So I'm hoping that the basics get automated as much as we can, much like SARS now automate a lot of personal tax returns. You just get an email saying we're done. Log in and see if you agree. Now, I think that's the way we've got to move. The simple stuff needs to be simple so we can spend more time on the stuff that really adds value. And hopefully all our government systems can talk to one another. I can't control that, but I hope that's where we go, and that allows us to move away from the admin and into the value space.
That's a very idealized way of thinking, Simon. I hope exactly the same. So, typically when we end off these pods, we have a couple rapid fire questions. So don't think too much. I've got a couple for you here. So what's one piece of software besides Sift, because we're not here to pun Sift, that you can't live without?
Xero. I love Xero. I log in the morning, it works.
Lovely. I love that. And then super interesting to me is, what's the best book or podcast that you've listened to or read recently?
Sure. Book. I read the Nike book, Shoe Dog, a while ago. I love that. And I've been listening to a podcast with John Sanei and another guy called The Expansive, Erik Kruger. Lovely podcast, two very tech-forward guys. They're always talking about AI. And I think what makes it great is it's not an overly scripted one. It's like a conversation with two guys where they just share thoughts, have throw out ideas, and it really makes me think. I finished the podcast and I've got 10 new ideas that I just going to kind of roll with.
I love that. I'll probably give that one a listen for sure. And then, what's the most valuable lesson you've learned about building a business, or businesses, should I say?
Sure. Businesses. I think we're at about 4 or 5 at the moment. Sure. I think communicate more than you think you need to do, and as early as you can in any situation. Don't hold things in, because the more you put things out there, it gives a chance to develop and engage and talk to one another.
I love that. And then just lastly, if there's one thing that you want listeners to take away from today's pod, what would it be?
If you own a company and you're working with anyone supporting you from a professional service point of view, understand what responsibilities that person has and how you know that they're doing their job to support you properly.
Amazing. Listen, Simon, I've properly enjoyed our conversation. I think had we not had the 30-minute time limit, I would have very much taken us on loads and loads of tangents. So I really appreciate it. And you've made it make sense to someone like myself, and hopefully for the people listening as well. You've made it a really interesting topic. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Wendy. Appreciate it, man. Have a good day.
Thanks for tuning in to the Beyond Insights podcast. Please like and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening to right now. And please share with any of your colleagues or friends or family members that you think might benefit from listening to this podcast. That's all from us. Until next time, see you then.